Hey, what's up? My name's Alea. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my spring TBR. Now, if you're wondering, Alea, why are you filming your spring TBR in a sweater next to a cozy candle? That would be because it is currently the very end of February when I'm filming this. I'm filming it early, and it is very stormy and snowy outside. So I'm freezing my ass off. Please let spring come. I just want to lay out in the sun like a lizard, to be honest. But without further ado, let's get into the TBR. So first off, I wanted to tell you about a bunch of romance novels I want to get to this spring. And the first one is How to Abduct a Highland Lord by Karen Hawkins. So this is a Scottish Highlander romance, and it's about these two people who are from opposing clans, and the girl from one of the clans is really distraught because her younger brother was killed in a bar fight by this other guy's brother. And so she realizes that she and this other clan need to have some kind of marriage happen so that the feud between the two clans will end. And so one night she finds this man named Blackjack Kincaid, and he's been thrown from his horse and he's passed out on the ground, and she goes, great, this is a perfect opportunity for us to get married to end the feud. And so she basically has somebody drag his unconscious body to the altar, and the two of them get married, and then she sends letters to both of their families and says that she is pregnant with his child, and that's why they got married. And she's trying to end this feud, and then one thing leads to another, and they end up falling in love. And of course, when he becomes conscious, he's not very happy about this marriage, and so they have to kind of work through that and stuff. But they kind of had feelings for each other when they were teenagers, and it sounds like this one's going to be really fun. And then next up I have another Highlander romance, and this one is a new one that I just got in my bookstore vlog that I recently filmed, and I got this at a used bookstore, and it's really pretty, and it has this really lovely step back too. And this is about this woman named Glynis, and she basically declared love to this guy Lennox, and he's like the love of her life, and she didn't get the response that she wanted from him when she told him that she was in love with him, and so she's really heartbroken. And then later on, this American guy proposes to her, and she agrees to marry him because she thinks the love of her life isn't into her, and she marries this American guy and moves back to America with him, and they live there for 7 years, and then her husband dies. And so she moves back to Scotland, and when she moves back, she runs into her old flame that she professed her love to, and turns out that he actually might have feelings for her. Oh my god, I'm so sorry if you can hear that truck outside. Oh, Lord. These men and their small pee-pee energy, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, so these two end up having like this second chance romance, and it sounds really good, and it's also set during the American Civil War, and it kind of talks about how the Civil War like affected these other countries as well, and it sounds really cool. And then finally I have a third Scottish romance. Are you sensing a trend here? And this one's called Never Seduce a Scot. So this is one that I heard Riley from Riley Marie talking about in one of her vlogs a really long time ago, and this is another one that's following two people from warring clans, and they have to get married to end the feud. And this one sounds interesting because the main heroine is deaf, and nobody really knows that she's deaf, and so she ends up having to marry this man she doesn't even know, and she ends up kind of falling for him because his voice is so low that she can like kind of feel the vibrations of it, and they end up having like a really cute, tender relationship. And I heard this is really good because it's not one of those where like her deafness is cured by the end of the book. Like she straight up has like this disability, and her partner like, you know, works with her so that they can communicate and that kind of thing. And it sounds really cute and tender, and this cover is also really stunning as well. And then next up I have a couple books in the same series, and I have one that I want to reread, which is The Queer Principles of Kit Webb. And so this is one that I recommended in my recent romance recommendations video, and it's really good, but it's been a couple years since I read it, and the sequel just came out, and I really want to read this one. And so I thought that I might reread Kit Webb and then get to The Perfect Crimes of Marian Hayes. And so this one follows two of the side characters from book one, and the main guy in here, Rob, he's really good friends with Kit, and they used to be like highwaymen together. And in this one, Rob ends up running away with this aristocratic lady, Marian, and it's kind of about their romance. And in book one, they were writing letters back and forth to each other because Robert was trying to blackmail Marion because Marion was married to somebody else, and he found out that her marriage was like not actually legit because her husband had been married before and had not divorced his first wife and had since tried to marry like 3 other ladies. And so Marion was like his newest wife, and Rob was like, you know that your marriage is like actually not legit, right? Anyways, so one thing leads to another and they end up together, and I really want to read this one, but I really want to remember all of the details from this one, so I want to get to these 2. And then hold on, I need to put these books somewhere. We're getting a stack here, folks. It's really a lot. Okay, get done there. And then next up, I have a couple Lisa Kleypas novels because I'm a slut for Lisa Kleypas and I want to read more of her books. And so I have It Happened One Summer by her, which is book 2 in the Wallflower series. And I just recently read book 1, Secrets of a Summer Night, and I really enjoyed that one, so I really want to get to this. And then I also want to read the 3rd book, which is Devil in Winter. And I think this one is probably going to be really, really good because it's following Evie, which is one of the side character ladies from book 1, and I really love Evie and I really want to see what happens with her in this one because I think she's gonna marry probably a rake, because apparently all the men in England were either rakes or pigs back in the 1800s. It seems that's a common theme I'm sensing with all these romance novels I've been reading as I've been coming into my romance era of late. And then next up I have the start of all the other books that aren't romance novels that I want to read. And this one is Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley. And this is a graphic novel that I just got for Christmas. And it looks really cool. It's got kind of like a cozy winter setting. And I think it's about our main character who is like opening this cafe kind of, and she's like renovating it. And the art is really cute. And I think she might have some kind of like a romance in here as well. The art style is really, really cozy and lovely, and I'm intrigued to see where this story goes, but it's also got some like kind of snowy, wintry vibes going on, and it looks really cool. I've heard really good things about Brian Lee O'Malley's stuff, so I really want to see how I feel about this one. And I think this was one that was recommended by Allie from Alice in Pages, and I love her book recommendations, and she reads a lot of graphic novels, so I trust her taste. And then next up, we have a few books that are for an upcoming video that you can probably very easily guess. But let's get into this stack. So the first one is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. So this is one that I was hearing a lot of really good things about at the end of 2022. And it's set in Syria during the Syrian Revolution, and we're following 2 women, and one of them is a teenager who has lost a lot of her family to the war, and then the other woman is the main character's sister-in-law who's pregnant, and they are trying to survive in like war-torn Syria, and they're trying to like help people who are wounded and stuff, and they're trying to get out of Syria before the one lady, Layla, gives birth to her child. And I've heard that this is really, really impactful, but also really sad, so I'm kind of nervous to read it, but it sounds really intriguing. And then next up, we have a horror novel that I've been hearing tons of good things about as well, and it's called We Spread by Ian Reid. So this is a horror novel about an elderly woman named Penny, and her husband has recently passed away, and she is kind of starting to forget things, and she has a fall, and her landlord says, hey, okay, like, remember before your husband passed away, we set up this thing so that when it was time, you could go and live at this facility and they'll take care of you, you won't have to worry about anything. And Penny doesn't really remember having that discussion. And so she's like, okay, I'll go to this facility, like whatever, we'll see what's up. And so she moves in there, and there's only a few other people who live in this facility, and they have a couple people who care for them there. And at first, things seem good. Penny's like kind of chilling, and then all of a sudden things kind of take a turn, and Penny's not sure if she can like trust herself in her own mind anymore because she kind of has dementia and she's getting old, and she's not sure if there's something like sinister or paranormal going on in this facility, or if it's just all in her head or what. And I've heard a lot of people say that they really enjoyed this and that this really freaked them out because, you know, getting older is scary and it's an inevitable thing, and this really touches on that kind of like horror that's close to home for everybody. So I'm excited to get to this. I think this also might hit close to home for me as well, just with a lot of the things that have been going on in my personal life in the last few months. But we shall see about this. I'm very intrigued by this, I have to say. And next up, we have another horror novel that everyone was screaming about, and it's Our Wives Under the Sea. And this one is about a lesbian couple, and one of the ladies goes on this deep sea mission, and something goes wrong in the mission, and she's in the ocean for a really long time, and then she ends up coming back, and we also get to see the perspective of her wife, and her wife seems to think that the love of her life who came back from the ocean is maybe not in fact her wife, and that maybe something sinister happened down there in the depths, and she suspects that things are not right with her wife at all, in fact. And so I'm not sure if this is going to be like a possession story or what exactly this is. It's not very long, but I've heard really good things about it. I've heard it's very creepy, and we also get a lot of scenes from the perspective of the woman who is on the mission, and we get to see what happened on the mission and what went wrong, and it sounds very like claustrophobic and eerie, and I'm excited to get to this because I haven't read a lot of queer horror, and that's something I really want to read some more of, so I think this is going to be really, really good. Next up, we have another one that I have not heard a single bad review for, and it's Notes on an Execution. And this one is about a man who's a serial killer, and he's on death row, and we're following the perspective of 3 different women who were in his life, and we get to see like how he impacted their lives. I think one of them is the detective who was like on his case, and then I think another one might be
a few moments later.
One of them is the twin sister of his wife, and then there's another woman as well, and we just get to see them talking about him and how they knew him and things like that. And I've heard this also talks a lot about the death penalty and kind of like lays out pros and cons of it, but it doesn't like force you to like see things a certain way. Like it kind of lets you come to your own conclusions about the death penalty and what you think, and it's not like trying to force a certain opinion on you, which I think is interesting. And I think this is another one that might hit close to home with some of the things that have been going on near where I live of late. But anyways, this sounds very intriguing to me, and I like that it's from the perspective of a bunch of different women and not from the perspective of the serial killer himself. I think that's really unique. Next, we have a YA horror novel, and that is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. So this is one that I've been hearing mixed things about lately, so I'm not totally sure if I'm gonna like this or not, but I have heard that the audiobook is really well done. So I think I'm gonna listen to that and then follow along in the physical book. And this is about a young woman, and she lives in the South, and she's mixed race. Her dad is white and her mom was black, and her mom has passed away, and her dad is forcing her to pass as a white girl, and he forces her to like straighten her hair every day before school and stuff, and so nobody at school knows that she's mixed race. And then one day she's in gym class and they're outside and it rains and her hair gets wet and her hair poofs up, and then everybody finds out that she's part black. And it's like a huge deal at the school because a lot of the kids at school are really, really racist and stuff. And then it's also about her and her powers, because this is a retelling of Stephen King's Carrie. And so this main gal has some telekinetic like powers and stuff. And it sounds like they have a prom at the school, and it's a segregated prom, and things really hit the fan and blood flows, and it sounds really interesting. It's like Carrie, but it's about racism. And I've heard this is a hard one to read because you get to see the perspective of a lot of the other teens who go to the school who are really racist, and so I don't think this is necessarily going to be like the funnest book to read, but I do think that it might be really impactful and enlightening, and I kind of want to see what happens at this prom because I've heard that part is really badass. And then next up, we have a book that I've actually already started reading and am already into, and that is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I'm pretty sure I am like the only human alive who hasn't read this book in the last like 6 months, and I really want to get to it. So this is a memoir about Jeanette McCurdy and her relationship with her mom, who was really manipulative and abusive in a lot of ways, and it's about how Jeanette kind of got like forced into acting because she was an actress on iCarly, and it's about her childhood growing up in this really toxic family, and We follow her perspective when she's little and then like as she gets older, and how her mom like forced her to be an actress because it was her mom's dream, and we get to see the dynamic between her parents and her siblings and what the household is like. And it's very sad and hard to read at times, but it's also extremely well written and it's very captivating. Like, this is the kind of book that you cannot put down. It's very, very good and sad and brutal and a lot. And there's a lot of layers to this onion of a book, but I will say that I think it does deserve the hype that it has with what I've read so far. So I want to finish this one soon. And then last, but certainly not least, is Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So this is another one that like everybody but me has read, and I just really want to get to it. And I've heard that this is a story about two people who met when they were really young. It's kind of a coming of age story, but it's also kind of a love story, and it's also about video games. And I think it's about these two young people who met in a hospital when they were kids, and they kind of start off as friends, and it's about friendship and stuff. And then as they get older, they decide to make a video game together, and then it's kind of about them like falling in love and the different ways that their lives intersect as they get older and that kind of thing. And it sounds really good. I've heard a lot of good things about it. So those are all the books on my spring TBR. Please let me know what you are reading in the next few months, as I would love to know. And if you got to the end of this video, leave me a purple heart emoji for all of the romances I want to read this spring. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!